Today we're going to get started on reading Beowulf, the epic poem. And remember, you have to say it, Beowulf, because he's such a manly man. Anyway, I recognize that's lost on you because you can't see my face. And honestly, I told you I'm not going to have the webcam on. I have no makeup on. Anyway, so this is the Meet the Author. We kind of went through this already. And we do know that the sole surviving copy of Beowulf is now under lock and key in library in London. So to kind of get us in the frame of mind, we're only reading one section today called Grendel. And we did go over how this is an epic poem. And epic poetry has a hero that is legendary. Everybody knows about him. He has lofty ideals. He's that man that every man wants to be, and he's the man that every woman wants to be with. It's very formal and very serious. There is a little humor, but not a whole lot for this one because this is how he wants to be remembered. And usually, one of the things with Beowulf is the fact that it relates to stuff that we've seen today. And there is an evil, and sometimes the evil can hide anywhere. It doesn't necessarily have to be a lair. In this case, Grendel is evil, but there are a lot of different reasons why he might be that way. So after we finish reading Beowulf, we may look at a little bit different perspective because there is a story told from the perspective of Grendel, who is the monster. So once you've gotten into the PDF, we are only reading 42, and then we are going to stop at 45 for today. There is a Dropbox with reading guide questions that go with Beowulf. So you will need to go ahead and answer the first 6 questions that go with Grendel. I'll stop every once in a while and explain things just to kind of give you a feel for how it would go if we were in the classroom and I was talking with you face to face. Beowulf. Hrothgar, king of the Danes, has built a wonderful mead hall called Heorot, where his subjects congregate and make merry. As the selection opens, a fierce and powerful monster named Grendel invades the mead hall, bringing death and destruction. One of the things you have to know about Hrothgar, he is a king, and his one job is to protect his kingdom, and he is failing miserably. Because if Grendel could come in and bring death and destruction, Hrothgar has not done the manly thing that he should have. Grendel. A powerful monster, living down in the darkness, growled in pain, impatient. As day after day the music rang loud in that hall, the harp's rejoicing call and the poet's clear songs sung of the ancient beginnings of us all, recalling the Almighty making the earth, shaping these beautiful plains marked off by oceans, then proudly setting the sun and moon to glow across the land and light it. The corners of the earth were made lovely with trees and leaves, made quick with life with each of the nations who now move on its face. And then, as now warriors sang of their pleasure, we're going to stop there for a minute. So Grendel is sitting in his lair in pain and in agony, impatient because he hears them singing in the hall about how wonderful life is. But the thing that bothers him most of all is the fact that they're singing about God and his creation. And you'll understand why later on in the story. Grendel has a deep, dark part of him that has nothing to do with God. And then as now, warriors sang of their pleasure. So Hrothgar's men lived happy in his hall, till the monster stirred, that demon, that fiend, Grendel, who haunted the moors, the wild marshes, and made his home in a hell, not hell, but earth. He was spawned in that slime, conceived by a pair of those monsters born of Cain, murderous creatures banished by God, punished forever for the crime of Abel's death. The Almighty drove those demons out, and their exile was bitter, shut away from men. They split into 1,000 forms of evils, spirits and fiends, goblins, monsters, giants, a brood forever opposing the Lord's will, and again defeated. So you're given a little bit of insight into Grendel and the way that he is. And we did talk about illusions, and we talked about the mark of Cain, Cain being the first murderer who killed his brother Abel, and Cain was punished. So remember, this poem would not have had biblical references in it until the monk wrote it down, because he had to put some interesting Christian elements to it. But this part right here is explaining why Grendel is so angry when it comes to God, when it comes to humans who are perfect in form. In his mind, they're perfect. And this is saying possibly that the brand of Cain, the mark of Cain, is that they were transformed into these hideous monsters, and all form of evil just spawned. And spawn is a really good verb, because it's not a positive verb. It's not one that you're going to say, I'm going to spawn you some breakfast today. But it shows you that he just kind of oozed out of the slime. It's gross. Ooh. Line 30. Then, when darkness had dropped, Grendel went up to Heorot, wondering what the warriors would do in that hall when their drinking was done. He found them sprawled in sleep, suspecting nothing, their dreams undisturbed. The monster's thoughts were as quick as his greed or his claws. He slipped through the door, and there in the silence snatched up 30 men, smashed them unknowing in their beds, and ran out with their bodies, the blood dripping behind him, back to his lair, delighted with his night's slaughter. Okay, so we know Grendel is like pretty intense. 30 men while they're sleeping, which is not honorable, by the way. At daybreak, when the sun's first light, they saw how well he had worked, and in that gray morning broke their long feast with tears and laments for the dead. Hrothgar, their lord, sat joyless in Heorot, a mighty prince mourning the fate of his lost friends and companions, knowing by its tracks that some demon had torn his followers apart. He wept, fearing the beginning might not be the end. We know that whenever they start to give you a little bit of a clue, that's called foreshadowing. And so he understands that he has failed, but he doesn't know how to fix the problem. And his biggest fear is that it's not over. And sure enough, and that night, Grendel came again. So one night went by. Grendel has had the taste of blood and has to have it again. So set on murder that no crime could ever be enough. No savage assault quench his lust for evil. Then each warrior tried to escape him, searched for rest in different beds, as far from Heorot as they could find, seeing how Grendel hunted when they slept. Distance was safety. The only survivors were those who fled him. Hate had triumphed. So Grendel scared the pants off these guys, and so they were like, oh, dude, I don't want to stay in Heorot anymore. This place isn't cool. So they all run away. So you have Hrothgar, who's basically the prince over a hall with no warriors in it. Talk about shame. So Grendel ruled, fought with the righteous, won against many, and won. So Heorot stood empty and stayed deserted for years, 12 winters of grief for Hrothgar, king of the Danes, sorrow heaped at his door by hell-forged hands. If you look off on the right-hand side, there's an example of a kinning. So instead of saying Grendel, hell-forged hands gives you that image of he's straight out of hell. His misery leaped the seas, was told and sung in all men's ears, how Grendel's hatred began, how the monster relished his savage war on the Danes, keeping the bloody feud alive, seeking no peace, offering no truce, accepting no settlement, no price in gold or land, and paying the living for one crime only with another. No one waited for reparation from his plundering claws. That shadow of death hunted in the darkness, stalked Hrothgar's warriors, old and young, lying in waiting, hidden in mist, invisibly following them from the edge of the marsh, always there. always unseen. So Grendel has no interest in peace. How do you reason with someone who's been in your hallway for 12 years, 12 winters, and he doesn't want reparation? He doesn't want you to make up for his suffering. It's almost like he's wallowing in it. Once again, here's another kinning. So mankind's enemy continued his crimes, killing as often as he could, coming alone, bloodthirsty, and horrible. Though he lived in Heorot when the night hit him, he never dared to touch King Hrothgar's glorious throne, protected by God. God, whose love Grendel could not know. But Hrothgar's heart was bent. The best and most noble of his council debated remedies, sat in secret sessions, talking of terror and wondering what the bravest of warriors could do, and sometimes they sacrificed to the old stone gods, made heathen vows, hoping for hell's support, the devil's guidance in driving their affliction off. So they were so desperate they even prayed to Lucifer, the devil, to get him to go away. That was their way and the heathen's only hope. Hell always in their hearts, knowing neither God nor his passing as he walks through our world, the Lord of heaven and earth. Their ears could not hear his praise nor know his glory. Let them beware those who are thrust into danger, clutched by trouble, yet carry no solace in their hearts, cannot hope be better. Hail to those who will rise to God, drop off their dead bodies, and seek our Father's peace. All right, so this whole part right down here from 95 to 100 probably wasn't in the actual translation of Beowulf, because that's all about God. And had they known about God and who he was, they wouldn't have been worried about Grendel. They would have just turned to Jesus. So Monk got his little hands in there and, kind of add a little bit of flair and pizzazz to Beowulf. And that is Grendel. So now that we have finished this part, go into your reading guide and make sure that you have answered those 6 questions.